Welcome, everybody, to the Creators Table podcast. I am your host, Tyler Watson. I'm joined here with Reagan Ellis. So, a little bit about Reagan. Reagan is an author, a director, and an activist. She has a book called Lilith's Haven that sole purpose is to raise awareness about violence against women, and is currently a film major and gender studies minor at SCAD with multiple film projects in the works. How are you doing today, Reagan?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad at all. So why don't you give us a bit of an intro on to you?
Yeah, so mainly right now, what I'm doing is school. I'm a student first and then exploring my art projects outside of that. A lot of directing, a lot of writing, and a lot of networking is what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, getting to know people. Gotcha.
Yes.
And
Yes.
finding people to know. Well, you're at a good school for it. I know I've had quite a few people on from SCAD at this point. You're probably like my sixth or seventh one from SCAD at this point.
Wow.
So tell us kind of like tell us kind of what your experience maybe at SCAD has been like. Getting that
I
environment.
yeah. I love SCAD a lot. When I was younger, I didn't really feel like I wanted to go to college because I feel like when you're an artist, it's kind of you have to make that decision for yourself whether or not you want to pursue that at
Hmm.
college or just kind of on your own. And I always felt like college wasn't really the path for me until I toured SCAD, and then it was like I never really wanted to go to college, but I wanted to go to SCAD. So SCAD
Oh
was
yeah.
actually the only school that I applied to because I just loved it so much.
Hmm.
And then since being here, I just feel like I've met so many incredible people and the opportunities are great. And I love living in Savannah. So the experience at SCAD so far, I'm only in my first year, but I love it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about SCAD, and there seems to be a very good environment for. It seems like you're surrounded by like-minded people, which is
Hmm.
which is honestly kind of just the best thing about it, in my opinion. It's kind of like you take the art program at any other university, but then make that the entire school, and every single
Yes,
person there is there for the same exact reason, which is awesome.
absolutely. And everybody has like their own niche and their own interests. And so it's just like such a collaborative experience, which
Mm.
I love, like getting to work with people who are majoring in fashion or like animation. Like there's always a way to bring other people on, and that's what's so exciting to me about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools at your disposal there, right? Kind of not to not to view people as tools, which sounds awful, but there's like, if you're like, "Oh, I need this graphic made for my movie poster." There you go. There's tons of graphic designers at SCAD, I'd imagine. So,
No, literally, I for my first short film last quarter, I had to have a sketch done of my main actor's face, and I literally just
oh
walked
wow.
across the hallway to our neighbors across from us and knocked on the door and was like, "Hey, can you draw a picture of this face for me?" And I'm really lucky, like my neighbor, she's super talented. Her art's hanging at the Met Gala at the Met in New
Oh
York.
wow.
So it's
Wow.
just like it's crazy, and I just live across from her.
That's awesome. Yeah. That is really awesome. So, yeah, exactly. You have just the people around you to, for what you need, right?
Yeah.
Well, kind of like, so kind of to dive back in towards your the movies you've been working on, the books. So why don't we first start by looking at the book that you wrote,
Yeah.
sorry. So tell us about your book and when you started it, why did you start it, what's it about, stuff like that.
Yeah. So Lilith's Haven was a long time coming for me, I always like to say. It's like I don't know. I always say like I came into this world like an angry feminist. Like since I was little,
Hmm.
I feel like I noticed the difference in treatment between women and men, and then getting older and understanding the complexities like between like intersectionality and how it even affects like women of color differently than it affects me. And so just like my whole life has been about learning more and more and more about that. And so Lilith's Haven came from a place of, it started kind of in a place of anger against like violence against women is a global health epidemic. And I feel
Hmm.
like nobody knows that. Like the World Health Organization declared it an epidemic. Nobody knows about it. Nobody talks about it. I like to call it like the invisible epidemic. And so it came from a place of anger from that. And that then it evolved into just like a deeply profound love for my female friendships and how they've healed me. And so it kind of became like a love letter to that and how I feel like women hold space for each other in just like such a beautiful way. So it's to raise awareness about violence against women, but it's also supposed to be a safe space for women. Like I really made sure to stray away from like going into detail about how gruesome and violent the deaths are in the book
Hmm.
because I feel like we get a lot of that in the media, and so it was more so to tell stories and talk about female friendships while bringing awareness to this.
Yeah,
Um, and it was
absolutely.
also inspired by a movie I watched where this girl went to go stay at this boarding house and it like turned into this scheme where like this man was involved with this ancient being who was like killing women to gain power. And I really thought that the ending was going to be all the women like coming together and kicking his ass, and it wasn't. And I was like, well, that's annoying. And
Oh
so I
yeah,
wrote kind of like my own version of that.
yeah, well, the better ending, right? How it should have ended.
Yes.
Yeah, of
Exactly.
course.
So I kind of I guess I didn't really give like a synopsis. It's a retelling of Lilith, who is in some cultures considered to be the first woman on Earth. And
Hmm.
it's also about a boarding house in the afterlife that she built, where women who have died at the hands of violence can heal before joining the land of the dead.
Hey there, we've got a quick ad break for you. And the ad is from me. If you or somebody you know is a creative type person, such as an artist, a musician, a content creator, as anything of the above, a small business owner, I would like to have you on my podcast. And I would love to be able to learn more about you and about what you do. So again, if you or somebody you know is a content creator, musician, and a creative person in general who has something they would like to share, then by all means, please reach out to me and I would love to have you on my podcast. And secondly, I would like to offer that I'm now running ads for people who would like to advertise something that they do, something they provide, whether it be they make art, whether they have a book they want to sell, doesn't matter. Whether they want to share some music that they make, doesn't matter. Reach out to me and you can have that in one of my episodes. But again, just reach out to me and I'll get you right back into the episode. Thank you. When you decided to write this, do you think it started with your message or do you think it started with your story?
I think for me and every project I do, it always starts with the theme and the message.
Hmm.
And that was definitely the case here because, like I said, it was kind of like simmering beneath the surface for me
Mm-hmm.
for a really long time. And then, honestly, like what came second after that was the visuals, like kind of
Yeah.
like what I wanted it to feel like and what I wanted the reader to imagine when they were reading the book. And then, kind of like the story and the structure came about. And honestly, like the specifics didn't even get ironed out until the second draft. One of my like favorite things that I kept in mind while I was writing it is the first draft is you telling yourself the story, and the second draft is you trying to make sure like you did that on purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Okay, yeah.
the laying out the framework, you like come up with things, and then you're like, wait, that's good, but let me make it look like I had that planned out since the beginning.
Yeah, intentionality, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I like this. Is this and right now, how long is your book? I'm curious.
So it's actually only it like depends on the format you're reading it on, like
Yeah.
Kindle or physical copy, but it's like about 90 pages. So
Hmm.
it's on the shorter side, and this was done with a lot of intention. Like I definitely could have
Yeah.
gone on and on about the characters for lots of days, and usually the biggest critique I get on my book is that people wish it was longer or they wish they got more about this certain character, that certain character, but the reason I made it so short and punchy is because I feel like especially with the recent fascination and like true crime podcasts, we get
Hmm.
so much of like missing out on the actual story about the woman's life, and then it's just like how violently it ended. And for me, whenever like I listen to that sort of media, I'm always left with this feeling of like I wish I had known more about her. I wanted my readers to feel like they miss the characters and they wish
Yeah.
they could have known more about them, just to really like drive that home that their lives got cut short for no good reason, and to be left kind of like with a sadness and anger that will propel them to want to make moves towards change, if that makes sense.
That is, yeah. I think the second you brought up true crime in that light, it immediately made me think of, have you seen South Park, perchance?
Yes.
Have you? There's one episode where I won't go into detail because it's kind of a weird episode, but they obviously try to ban their parents from watching these true crime basically type things because their parents are ending up like killing each other basically, and it's like
Yeah.
scaring the kids and all this because kind of like you said, they kind of portray true crime in that way where instead of like you really when they kind of portray these stories sometimes maybe if it's a more historical story like an older story they might go into more depth on the actual person itself but yeah a lot of the time they're just going into kind of what happened and
Yeah.
how brutal it was and what happened to the person who went to jail. A lot of times, I think it's more on the perspective on the person who did it and not the actual victim.
Yeah, we put a lot of spotlight on the killer, which they don't deserve, or the perpetrator, whatever the crime
Mm-mm.
was. Because when I talk about violence against women, like that is a term that encapsulates like sexual violence, physical violence, and mental violence. So like
Mm.
spotlighting the perpetrator, and then it also like objectifies the woman in the sense that like we're not looking at her as a human, we're looking at her as a victim. And
Yeah.
I completely wanted to flip that on its head in this book. So there's like it there's like barely any violence. It's more just like a mention of violence in the book because I feel like we get enough of that, and I also feel like to a certain extent like it's leading us in the wrong way. And I struggle with this with myself honestly because as a filmmaker, I'm like there's going to be certain times where I feel like woman a woman dying is like essential to the story, but I just feel like as a community, like as all of us as artists should be a lot more mindful with how we portray that and if it's necessary because I feel like that culture is I don't feel like that culture. I know that culture from all my research is like contributing to the problem, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I kind of see what you mean with if you establish like a certain level or specifics in violence. I guess it's a little bit more. There's a broader reach of who is I guess feels heard or can feel like they can relate to if you
Mhm.
because obviously there's level of effectiveness I guess like there's level of
Right.
violence and then there's level of impact on the actual person in multiple
Absolutely.
different ways so I'm not necessarily saying all I'm saying is I see what you're saying and how it can everybody can be affected by that in some way, shape, or form, or every woman can in some way, shape, or form, and it's leaving it kind of open ended like that. I think is more welcoming. I guess maybe.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's very good. I think this will be. I think this is a really good book that you're kind of writing from, and you're writing it from a good place. It looks like, which or you've
Thank
already
you.
written it, so probably
Yeah, yeah.
How long did it take you to write?
Well, since it was so short, it took probably like 6 months, lots of drafts.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the most fun part about writing was probably like sharing it with other people to read it and give me feedback. And so
Mm.
that also kind of slowed down the process because I would like wait to hear from other people. But yeah, I think it took about 6 months. And I actually switched to online school for my last quarter of high school so that I could focus on writing it.
That's good.
And then it came out September 3rd. I had a book launch at my local bookstore, and then the
Mm-hmm.
next day I packed up and moved to Savannah for school. So it was all
Oh
very
wow.
quick.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
yeah. And now you got to bring your book with you and be like, "Yo, guys, I just released a book, man." Do you
It's
have
so
a
cool.
yeah?
It's so cool, like, because I had a lot of like SCAD mutuals on Instagram from like the SCAD 2028 page, and we all followed each other, and then like more so in the beginning of this year, but like still probably like once every other week I'll meet someone new and they're like, "Are you that girl that wrote that book?"
Oh
It's like,
really?
"Wait, I am." Yeah, and it's just like it's like so cool to see that people know, I guess, and that they care. And then like I've had a few people even who have read it and annotated it, and that's just the coolest thing ever.
Do you ever see somebody walk or holding like the a physical copy of the book, and do you ever have you seen have that has that happened to you, and you kind of just like get that kind of realization like whoa, like people are interested in or spent their money on something I
Yeah.
made, and like they're
Yeah,
sitting and
that was
reading it.
definitely the most prominent was when so many people showed up to the book launch. Like I had to I've always been a very deeply emotional and sensitive person. So when I went up to go talk, I like literally was like on the verge of tears because I was like, I can't believe all these people are here for me and like care about this story.
Yeah,
And then like
absolutely.
everybody seeing everybody walk out with their own copies and like that was definitely the biggest day for me. But even now, like I'll have I've had like a couple people get it and then ask me to sign it, which is so cool and it's just
Mhm.
so rewarding. Like one of my friends that I'm not even that close with, she came home after winter break with a fully annotated copy of the book, like notes in every
Oh
space
wow.
of the page, and it just meant so much to me that like somebody connected with the text that much.
Well, they took the time to analyze it and then not just kind of be like, "Oh yeah, I'll give it a read," you know? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
kind of like a pity thing. I definitely can relate
Mhm.
to that. I had when I first started the podcast, it was kind of one of those things where I was like, ah, you know, it'll be slow, you know, and I had one of my buddies, and he was like, oh yeah, listen to the next episode. I was like, really? I was like, you're actually listening? You know, you're tuning in?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, it's
It means
very
a lot.
it does mean a lot, especially when, which I'm sure you felt this for sure, especially when it's people you don't know very well or you don't know at all. You know,
Yes.
it's like, how do you know about
Yes.
me?
Exactly. It's very surreal and very it's like humbling in a weird way. Like, I don't know. It always makes me feel very human, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. If I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like,
No,
wow, like
yeah.
we're connecting on this crazy level. Like we haven't even met and you read my book and that's crazy.
Does you or someone you know have a piece of art that they've been looking to find, but they just can't find it? Something to put up in their room that really shouts their personality? And, well, I might know exactly who you were looking for. And who I'm talking about, of course, is Vivid Joyce. Now, she makes art all sorts of sizes. Whatever size you need, you just give it to her and she'll make it for you. At prices as low as $20. She can do whatever design you were looking for. All you gotta do is shoot her that design and she will have that ready for you. And to whatever specifications you need, whether you want that sketched, watercolor, whatever you are looking for, whatever your desires are, she can do that for you. If you or someone you know is looking for a piece of art to either gift, to put in your room, to hang on your wall, whatever it may be, she can help you with that. But other than that, go check out the link in my bio. To find her link, the link will be in the bottom of this video. And yeah, the link will be in the description of the video. So what is the process like for you when you wrote this book? Did you is there certain kind of things you did when you went to go write the book? Like, let's say let's view you as a an experienced author. How are you explaining your writing process?
Yes. A lot of grilled cheeses.
Really?
Actually,
Okay. Yeah.
anytime
Food
I
is
had a
good.
writer's block, anytime I had a writer's block, I would go downstairs, put on some pop music, and make a fire sourdough grilled cheese.
All right.
And that always cleared the way for me. I also listened to like it's a very like gothic visually like inspired by gothic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Book, so I would put on music that emulated that and I would drink my peppermint tea. Um I would call my older cousin. Her name's Katie. She always reads everything I write. She's the first one to read it and the last person to double and triple check it. So it was a lot of like a lot of imposter syndrome when I'm writing this book. Like I have no authority to write this, even though I'm like done a lot of research and
Mhm.
calling her and her reassuring me that I know what I'm doing. Um, a lot of I guess writing what I was most excited to write instead of forcing myself to go in chronological order and then
Yeah.
piecing that together because I had a lot of different main characters and a lot of different perspectives and each main character is a piece of me, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
some days I would feel more connected to this character as opposed to this character, and so just kind of leading with my gut on that.
Mm.
And yeah, that was most of my writing experience.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
grilled cheeses, peppermint tea, and some good music. That's yeah. I
Yes.
mean, it seems like you have good
And a
people around
candle.
you. Yeah, and a candle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like
Yeah.
you had good people around you to kind of bounce off of for inspiration or advice. I know it's like most of the time, anytime I'm home and my mom's around and I'll usually have an idea and then I'll immediately be like, okay, what do you think of this? And then somebody's gonna give you feedback and not just be like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, you could do
Yes.
that. You know, not to be
Someone
mean
who's
to
gonna
those
be
people,
real with
but
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like tell me it's a bad idea, you know,
Yeah,
if it is, of
for
course.
sure.
Um, and have you had any? Well, since your book is kind of in the way it is, have you had any meaningful experiences from how your book has impacted people?
Mostly, like the biggest one that comes to mind is my older sister
Mm-hmm.
because she had her own experience that relates to a lot of the themes in the
Mm-hmm.
book that really like kind of inspired it. She was the one that I watched the movie with that inspired it too, and she inspires me in everything that I do. And
Mm-hmm.
since she had like such a real life experience with that, getting her approval on the book meant the entire world to me. Like the way she supported me and like the way she showed up for me at my book launch.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't like I'm like getting emotional even thinking about it. Just that she felt very felt and seen and heard by what I had written just meant everything to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very because you're writing about something that's very can be a very deep thing for a lot of people, and
Mhm.
when you're writing about it, you know it when you there's a lot on your shoulders to write for about that experience that a lot of people go through and portray it the right way and to
Yeah.
not and to do it right, you know. Not
Yep.
saying people are gonna be offended or you know something like that, but some people like if you get it right, then that's gonna mean a lot to people, you know,
Yeah.
especially people who don't feel very understood, you know.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, why don't we kind of adjust our sights more onto your short films? So why don't you tell us a little bit about the? Let's start with the one that's coming out the most soon, I guess.
Yes. Okay. So coming out, actually, I don't know the date, but hopefully early to mid-March, we have the Beauty Shop, which is for my film 232 class, but it's actually based on a short story that I wrote kind of similar timing to when I was writing Lilith Haven. And
Nice.
it's about this girl named Angel who has some religious trauma surrounding her name, and she also has
Hmm.
um some issues with her self-esteem, to put it lightly. She can't look in the mirror without seeing biblically accurate angels, and it's kind of
Hmm.
it was inspired by my own struggle with body dysmorphia and my
Hmm.
own like religious trauma, and so she can't look in the mirror without seeing these crazy biblically accurate angels, which like sends her into these crazy spirals. So to combat this, because she is obsessed with beauty, the way she looks in the mirror is by making these creepy masks and wearing them,
Oh
and that
wow.
way she can look in the mirror without seeing her reflection. And she decides to join the local beauty pageant,
Hmm.
and she'll do anything to win, and that's all I'll say. And I'm very excited. I'm very lucky in the team I have to make this film. Everyone's very passionate, very talented people, and it's really exciting getting to adapt something that I've written for the first time.
Yeah,
And yeah, very excited.
that is very cool. That's is this a short film or is this a full length? Just curious.
It's a short film, and I was really worried about how I was gonna get all of it into under 7 minutes, but I sat down with my writing partner, Jonathan Fielder, and we just like it just like came out perfectly. Like and
Hmm.
it all the pacing was perfect and it we were actually like a page under what the maximum was and I honestly still don't know how we did that, but it ended
Yeah.
up working.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really good. Did you have what was the team kind of like? Did you have like were these friends that you picked out or were these people from the class?
So it was actually like everybody in my class presented an idea and then we like all kind of got to choose two that we thought should go to production and I was lucky enough that mine got chosen and then from there like people could choose if they wanted to be on my project or the other one in the class that was being made
Mm-hmm.
which is being made by my friend Solvay, and that'll be out at the same time. It's called Camp Guards, but
Cool.
we got to they got to choose the team. So I that was really nice because instead of getting people assigned to me who maybe didn't really care about the project, it was people who chose my project, so that I know that they actually
Oh
like connect
yeah.
to the material and are passionate. So that's really nice.
Yeah, they have a vision for it and they're not just like, okay, so this
Yeah.
is what you want to do. Yeah. I
Yeah.
understand.
And I
Yeah.
also got primarily my team is woman and that's so great because there's such a lack of representation in the film industry right now with that. So any chance I get to work with other female filmmakers is a privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. And this yeah, going 7 minutes feels like there's a lot there's not a lot of time and then depending on your story there's a lot you want to get out with that. I feel like 7 minutes
Mhm.
would be challenging but possible.
Yeah,
Challenging
yeah.
still.
Yes. Definitely a challenge when you're under a time constraint like that, but also a blessing.
Mm.
I feel like if I were to have the freedom to make it as long as I want, that could be almost more of a struggle for me since like I'm still in the early stages. It's kind of nice to have guidelines and um learning how to overcome time challenges in earlier in my career. I think that's setting me up for success.
Mm.
And it's also hard to find like if it was longer, I would have to find a crew that was willing to film like more days and we're all college students and we have other classes. So it's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
It's hopefully going to be a 2 or 3 day shoot, 12-hour days probably. So it's like if I would have a hard time asking people for more time than that, knowing that they have other things going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to like I recently joined the film club at my school and I'm very intrigued to see to participate. Like I went to a screenplay reading
Hmm.
one the other day and I just found it was very interesting. I've never written a screenplay. I've
Yeah.
let alone very looked over very many. My buddy, he's wants to be a filmmaker, and I've read his screenplays and stuff like that. And so I just sat there and just listened. I was late, so I really couldn't contribute that much. But I just sat there and listened. And I was like, this is very interesting, and I think it's a very fun thing to do. You know, regardless of
Yeah.
if your short film gets submitted to a festival and gets super popular, regardless of the success of it, I guess it's kind of like it's still a very cool experience that you can have in college. You know.
Yes, exactly. I feel like the most lucky person in the world because I just like get to make friends and film stories. Like, and that's what I
Yeah.
do with my life. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would. I definitely think that that is a very fun thing to do. I
Yeah.
think regardless, you can enjoy it. 12-hour shoot would be brutal. But it's still. I imagine that by the end of the day, you're kind of still very happy with kind of how it went.
Oh yeah. It was a little bit of a different experience this past weekend when I was a costume designer on Boogie Wonderland, which will definitely be out by the time this is filming. So definitely check that out. But that was a different experience because I was costume designer, so by the end of it, I was kind of like exhausted and like in my
Mm.
own world. Still such an incredible experience. But when I directed Blind this past quarter, it we got home so late and I was so energized and so excited about everything that was happening and feeling so lucky that my cast and crew was so great that I was like exhausted in my bones, but I've never felt that incredible in my entire life. And it
Yeah.
was also my first experience filmmaking, period. Like I
Mm.
kind of woke up one day in high school and was like, and what if I went to film school
Yeah.
with zero experience? And I'm so glad I followed
Mm.
that crazy whim because I know I'm in the right place now. But since it was my first time doing that, it was such a feeling of like, wow, I am on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
I am doing the right thing. So I didn't get much sleep that night, but like in a good way.
Yeah. No. I definitely understand that. Yeah. It's like I've said this on, to the people who are consistently listening to every episode, they're probably annoyed by the amount of times I bring this up. But it's one of those things where it's like a little, like an itch you have, I guess, in the middle of the night when think of an idea and then
Yeah,
you can't sleep, basically.
it's
Um,
exactly that.
so since you kind of brought up kind of just waking up in the middle of the night and be like, I'm gonna be a film director. So what exactly is someone something, so that could be a piece of media, a celebrity, somebody in your family or a friend who inspired you to want to do film directing?
Jordan Peele, 100%. For the rest of my life, I will thank that man for existing and
Jordan
for
Peele.
making Get Out. Jordan Peele, he's a director. He directed Get Out. He directed Nope and Us, and
Interesting.
I look up to him so much because I had so many different, and I feel like everybody, but specifically art people can relate to this. Growing up, you have so many different interests and so many different things you want to do, and I felt like I was never really super great at any of them, but I've always been passionate about social justice. So I kind of
Mm.
switched my gears from art for a while and thought that I was maybe going to go into political science. And then I saw Jordan Peele and what he was doing with Get Out and how he was still focusing on social justice and like spreading his message, but doing it through art. And that's what
Mm.
I want. That's what I want to do with the rest of my life. So, and he's just so talented in his directing, and so I really owe it all to him, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's, maybe someday you'll meet your hero,
I
that'd
hope.
be I recently had my old English teacher on to the podcast, which was very cool. And
That's so cool.
yeah, it was very, and he always talked to us about how he met his hero, David Sedaris, and
Hmm. That's super cool.
kind of how telling me about how that, if you're listening, you should go check that one out, because that was a very cool story. But hearing about how he met him was really cool. He just sent him kind of like a letter, basically, and he responded. So it's like, imagine,
Wow.
yeah, it's like, imagine you write, to just write a letter to Jordan Peele or like an email, and he just
Yeah.
responds. It
Oh my God.
that,
I would be like peak. I might do that. We'll see.
You should, because for my old English teacher, he ended up opening for one of his shows and doing a
Wow.
bunch of stuff. Helping with, I think he did an interview or something like that, like doing a bunch of stuff with David Sedaris. So it's I was like, it's shocking. It's awesome, but it's like,
Yeah.
how? It's very cool. It's very cool.
Super cool.
So kind of in general, you kind of, I like that you said that you'd kind of done a lot of art related things, but you weren't necessarily sure what was the right one for you.
Yeah.
And would you say because you have your book, obviously, and
Hmm.
now you're doing short films as well, would you say you're still interested in writing books? Like, would you say you would write another book?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm really hoping to finish one by the end of this year.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably hopeful thinking because school and film keeps me so busy.
It's just true.
I already have ideas of what I want to do, and I love filmmaking so much, but writing definitely was my first love,
Mm.
and it's something I'll always have a special place in my heart for and want to pursue.
You're always still writing, and you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you said beforehand, you said you were gonna people would ask you about directing certain things, and obviously you're not necessarily as involved in the writing process of those. But if you're there's a lot of times where you're probably still going to be writing screenplay. You're still writing a story,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's kind of you're still doing writing. So whether you're just submitting just the paper copy of your story or a visual copy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Because that's a good way to think about that. I like that.
So this is a little bit off the beaten path. I say it every single time, and everybody's super tired of hearing me say it. But uh, I'm sure you saw this question. But what is a piece of media or art that you unapologetically enjoy that might shock others, aka a guilty pleasure? So obviously, you do a lot of your stories revolve around a social justice theme. So
Hmm.
maybe was something that doesn't revolve around that theme, whether it be a movie, show, game, anything like
Right.
that, that you enjoy that people might not expect.
Definitely. And I literally like will die on this hill
Oh,
and I argue about it with my film friends. I love Disney's Descendants
oh,
so much. Like I fight
oh
the
man.
urge to add that to my letterbox top four every day. Like I love that movie so much. I think it's genius what they did with like the
Wow.
villain's kids. Yeah, I love it. I think the music's incredible. I think the costumes are really cool. We don't really need to get into the CGI, but
No, yeah.
I love it so much.
It's a Disney Channel movie, okay? You got to take it with a grain of
Yes.
salt, okay? You know what? That's not a horrible take, okay?
Thank
Letterbox
you.
top 4 is it's possible. Okay, because in my top four, and I again, this is my hill to die on is Cars.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yes.
and
I love cars.
and that's like my top four. It's like there's like Whiplash. There's The Truman
Mhm.
Show. There's I don't know. There's a lot I have up there, like American Psycho, and then there's Cars. So,
Yes.
it's a little
Sometimes you like it's so important not to take everything seriously or you're gonna drive yourself crazy.
yeah.
And but I say that, but then like I still will take everything seriously. Like I really do think Descendants is a great example of writing complex characters.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't take it seriously because it's just fun. Like I'll give I don't really care about The Godfather. Like, I
Ooh.
don't care. Like that story didn't hit me in my feels. I don't care. But I'll give like a cheesy romance movie 5 stars if it taught me love and fun and joy, and I had a great
Yeah.
time watching it. And I think that especially in the film community, everyone needs to take it a little bit less seriously and understand that people connect with things differently.
Yeah. You really just like recited that one Family Guy clip with Peter Griffin, but
Yeah, I
that's all I could
did.
think about when he said I didn't care for The Godfather. I was like,
I
what?
didn't.
That's funny.
And that was the realest thing they've ever said on Family Guy. Like, why would I care about The Godfather? That's not true.
Oh
Oh my
yeah.
God, I mean, like, I respect it. I do. It's just
Mm.
not like it just didn't make me feel like I don't know. I don't feel like it was written for me, and that's okay.
No, I fully agree. I fully agree. I felt like one of my favorite movies, and I watched this recently, was Whiplash, and I
Love
remember
Whiplash.
watching it, and it was like in the middle of the night, and I feel like that's definitely a movie. I feel like probably only a certain group of people are probably gonna enjoy, even though I think hands down still a good movie. There's obviously a certain theme around the arts around it, with music, and sort of that passion around music, and kind of that driving factor in the success of an artist. And it I remember watching it, and like the final scene is obviously like super epic, and I'm like sitting there in bed like exhausted, and I'm just like I like had to sit up from my bed as I'm like watching it, and I'm like it was an experience. I wish I could relive it, to be honest, because I was just like absolutely just flabbergasted at what I just witnessed. And yeah, there's just movies like that I think just affect people in just impact them in such a big way, and you can't necessarily explain it.
I love Whiplash because I it does such great representation of how like crazy you can be an artist and like wanting to be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. It really
Thing
it's really
Hollywood too.
oh, go ahead.
No, that's all.
Yeah, it's really a movie I found that really kind of I not related to. I didn't get hit by a car when I was trying to drive back home to the or drive back to the thing and then still perform.
Thank
Um,
God.
but my question, what is like your letterbox top four, by the way? Like, what would you say
Oh,
your
it
top
is
four
so
is?
basic. I
That's totally
am
fine.
a like big advocate for like all my tastes are pretty basic like music wise and everything, and I think that
That's
that's
fine.
okay. So
Yeah.
I have La La Land, which I love dearly,
Okay.
dearly, dearly. It means a lot to me because my whole life, and it's gonna be like a dumb moment. Like obviously I'm a filmmaker, I love movies, but I loved movies so much that like I would leave the movie theater with a group of people. They're like, "So what did you guys think of it? Did you like it?" And I'm like, I didn't know not liking movies was an option. Like my whole life when I was little, I never understood that question because I was like, of course I liked
Yeah.
it. What do you mean?
Yeah. It's
And
of course it
then
was good. Yeah.
and and it was just like such like a love for movie. But when I saw La La Land, it just like clicked in my head that movies are a form of art, and it's like a bunch of different components coming together to
Mm-hmm.
make it something so beautiful. And I dragged my family and friends to see La La Land like I think like 11 times in theaters because it just hit me really hard. And then now that I'm older, it means even more to me because Mia's character, I think that La La Land, like the discourse around it gets overshadowed a lot by their romance, but it also is a story of like two people following their dreams, which is honestly what intrigues me more and
Mm-hmm.
why I love it so much today. And
Yeah.
then my other one, I have Nope, Jordan Peele's Nope, because that's my favorite of his movies. Because he's just a genius and
Yeah. Yeah.
he blended genres like crazy and it has Kiki Palmer in it, so duh. Um, and then I have Little Woman, Greta Gerwig's Little Woman.
Of course.
Oh, I love that book. That movie means everything to me. Joe March means everything to me. I go line for line when I watch that movie. Like I have the whole thing memorized. And then last, oh, I have Lost in Translation as my last one
Okay.
right now because it's a comfort movie for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's interchangeable for me with Jennifer's Body and Exterminating Angel right
Wow.
now. But
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
those are four.
I'm gonna be honest, and I feel bad for saying this, and I haven't seen some of these, and I feel even worse for saying I haven't seen La La Land.
And that's
Um,
okay.
there's a lot of movies I'm getting there to watch because I watched a lot of like
Yeah.
those, I guess those iconic '80s movies. I guess growing up, I watched because
Yeah.
my parents wanted to share them, which I like a lot of them. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe I'll watch maybe La La Land. I'll add that to my watch list then.
You should. You should. I love that movie. But yeah, it's okay that you haven't seen them. I feel like coming to film school is a big my watch list is never ending and it's rare that I've seen somebody's entire top four, so I
Yeah,
get
that's
it.
true. That's true. Um, well, that's kind of leading us into our last question here, sadly. What is a piece of advice you would give to others in your comparable situation? So, other other women maybe who are wanting
Mhm.
aspiring writers or film directors, maybe advice for them.
Yeah. So my general advice for everybody, and I say this like to nauseum to everybody in my life, but I think
Mm,
that the reason I've gotten all the opportunities that I have that we were kind of talking about earlier before the podcast is like just knowing yourself really well and
yeah, yeah.
never and it's cliche and it's corny but never straying from that and then leading every situation like everything you do you have to lead with kindness and gratitude and I
Hmm.
truly think that that's what's attracted all of the luck that I have in my life is remaining kind to everybody even when people aren't nice to you because they won't always be and as my mom always says growing up and then just being grateful for everything. I feel like when you're in that mindset of being grateful with what you have, but striving for more, everything's gonna come to fruition the way it should.
Yeah.
Specifically for women, I would say find your community, find your woman that you can come back home to after like a long day of maybe dealing with some idiot men that you can
Hmm.
just like feel safe around and talking to them. And I would say easier said than done, but never ever let anybody like dim your light. And it can be so hard. It can be so hard, especially on movie sets, and we're in a field that's so male dominated.
Hmm.
But staying true to yourself and not letting your opinion getting bulldozed over. Yeah.
Yeah.
And finding that community, I know that you probably have a lot of SCAD listeners, so I'm gonna plug SCAD Women in Film. I'm on the networking committee,
Of
and
course.
that is open to everybody, even not just women. Everybody's allowed to come. So yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of one thing when you said kind of finding for women that to find a woman to to go back to when you need advice and
Yep.
stuff like that. I feel like people kind of like sometimes people take that the wrong way. And I think it's kind of just one of those things where like when you're I think it's like it makes a lot of sense to me. It's like
Yeah.
I feel like I've always had a certain guy in my life who I've even amongst all other guys, and anybody in my life, I would just go back to if you need advice, if you need help,
Yeah.
it's different,
Yeah.
and I feel like sometimes we kind of see that and we're like, oh, like, on kind of one hand, some people would be like, oh, don't hate on men, and I'm like, I don't necessarily know if it's hating. I think it's just kind of, well, we're different, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Believe it or not,
Exactly.
people are different, and there's certain factors that
Exactly.
make them think differently, and they have different experiences, and
Yes.
that's definitely an important thing to say.
And I think finding the right group of women too can be very difficult because we are in such filmmaking in general
Mm,
feels can feel very, very competitive. And then when you're a woman and you realize that there's less space in the room for you, it can be your natural instinct to feel competitive and feel animosity towards other women on set. And I think it's
yeah,
so important to put that aside and then make sure that the people you're surrounding yourself with actually want to see you succeed and don't feel like they need to win against you, if that makes sense. So just finding
absolutely,
that support system.
absolutely,
And
yeah,
and being that support system and showing up for other women is the other advice I could get because that's really fulfilling. And when you truly, truly want to see your friends succeed, like that's really fulfilling and that's part of filmmaking.
absolutely, yeah. Kind of working for each other and not against each other. Working as a
Yes.
community, because if you kind of burn all your bridges with everybody so you can get ahead, you're
Yeah.
not gonna have very
You
many
screw
people you can
yourself.
trust. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. Well, I want to thank you for being on the podcast today. This has been a very another very interesting episode, and thank you to all the
Thank you
listeners
for
for.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to all the listeners for tuning in. If you would like to find any links for Reagan, they will be in the description of this video or in the description of this podcast. And is there anything else you'd like to say, Reagan?
No, just thank you for having me and thank you to everyone for listening.
Well, again, have a great day, everybody, and I will see you at the next episode. Have a good one.